Imagine, my daughter threw a lavish birthday party for my granddaughter with 300 guests, but when I arrived, the security guard said, "Sorry, this party is for close family only." I smiled, made one phone call, and every guest was in shock. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. Sir, I'm sorry, but I have strict instructions. No exceptions today. The security guard's hand pressed firmly against my chest as I stepped toward the ornate iron gate. Behind him, through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see at least 300 people celebrating my granddaughter's 10th birthday. Balloons bobbed against the crystal chandelier. Children ran between adults in designer clothing. Instructions? I shifted the carefully wrapped art set under my arm. $200 worth of professional supplies for Sophie's talent. This is my granddaughter's party. Brian appeared in the doorway, wearing a charcoal Tom Ford suit that cost more than my monthly pension. His BMW X7 gleamed in the driveway, the same $80,000 vehicle I'd helped him buy with my emergency loan last year. "Rick," Brian's voice carried that smooth sales manager tone I'd grown to recognize. "I thought we discussed this." We discussed nothing. My weathered hands tightened on Sophie's gift. When did celebrating a child's birthday require security? "Look, it's complicated. We're keeping this to immediate family only. You understand how these things can get overwhelming for the kids." Brian gestured toward the window, where a DJ spun music for the crowd of strangers dancing in his living room. The March afternoon sun highlighted the contrast between my 15-year-old Toyota Camry and the row of Mercedes, Audis, and Lexuses lining his street. Manicured lawns stretched between houses that could each buy and sell my modest Park Ridge home twice over. Immediate family? I watched a woman in Louboutin heels chase a toddler past the window. "Brian, I don't recognize half those people." "These are business associates, Rick. Important connections for my career advancement trajectory. We can't have any distractions from the networking opportunities." The security guard shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, I'm just following orders." "Distractions." I repeated the word slowly. "That's what you call Sophie's grandfather." Brian's manicured fingers drummed against the doorframe. "Listen, you know how Sophie gets when she's overstimulated. Too many emotional dynamics in one space. We're protecting her developmental experience." Through the window, Sophie appeared in a princess dress that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. She laughed at something a stranger said, her face bright with joy. My heart clenched watching her celebrate without me. "She's expecting me?" I took another step forward. "I promised her." "Promises change, Rick. Market conditions evolve. We're operating under different parameters now." Brian's tone grew colder. The decision matrix has shifted. The business jargon felt like slaps across my face. This man was denying me access to my granddaughter using corporate speak, as if our family were some quarterly profit report to be optimized. I placed Sophie's gift against the gatepost. My hands shook, not from age but from a rage so pure it made my chest burn. The security guard looked away. "You'll regret this," I said quietly. Brian laughed. "What's that supposed to mean? You going to call corporate on me?" I turned toward my car without another word. Dignity demanded silence now. Behind me, the party music swelled, drowning out the sound of my granddaughter's laughter that I wasn't allowed to share. My keys trembled as I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, Brian was already back inside, probably explaining to someone how he'd handled the family situation efficiently. The gift sat abandoned by his gate like everything else he'd taken from me. I pulled away without looking back, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. The 15-minute drive home felt endless. Every red light gave me time to replay Brian's dismissal, his casual cruelty wrapped in business terminology. My hands hadn't stopped shaking by the time I pulled into my driveway. Inside my modest kitchen, I made tea with mechanical precision. The routine helped steady my nerves, but sitting at my worn wooden table, surrounded by 40 years of accumulated memories, the hurt transformed into something sharper. I retrieved the manila folder labeled Emily Support from my filing cabinet. Engineering habits die hard. I'd kept meticulous records of every family transaction, every request for help, every sacrifice I'd made gladly. 8 years ago, Emily had called, crying. Post-birth complications, she'd said. Medical bills piling up faster than Brian's commission checks could cover. "Dad, I can't handle this. $5,000, or they'll send Sophie's delivery costs to collections. I'd written the check that same afternoon. My daughter needed help. My granddaughter's future was at stake. What grandfather wouldn't empty his savings? 6 years ago came the house crisis. Emily's voice desperate over the phone, explaining how they'd found their dream home but fell short on closing costs. $15,000, Dad. Just this once, and we'll never ask again. Brian's convinced his promotion is coming through next quarter. I'd liquidated my emergency fund without hesitation. Family came first. Always had, since Margaret died and left me to be both grandfather and safety net. 4 years ago brought the educational opportunity. Brian had smooth-talked me about Sophie's artistic gifts, how monthly payments would unlock her potential. $300 monthly investment in your granddaughter's future. She's exceptionally talented, Rick. This could change her life trajectory. I'd set up automatic payments immediately. Sophie's drawings had always amazed me. If she needed specialized instruction, I'd provide it. What else was money for? 2 years ago, the biggest request arrived with crisis-level urgency. Mortgage payments missed, foreclosure looming, Sophie's stability threatened. $25,000, Dad. It's the mortgage company's final offer before they start proceedings. We can't let Sophie lose her home. I'd tapped my retirement fund, justifying it as protecting my granddaughter's childhood. The house where she'd grow up, make memories, become the artist she was meant to be. Now, spreading the documents across my table, I tallied the totals: bank statements, canceled checks, automatic payment confirmations. The calculator showed $97,000 in 4 years. Then I found it, tucked between mortgage payment receipts. A BMW dealership invoice dated March 15, 2022. The same day Emily had called about their medical emergency. The same day I'd transferred $25,000 from my retirement account. Brian's new X7, $80,000. Purchased with my money while he fed me lies about losing their home. I stared at the evidence, feeling pieces click together like a blueprint coming into focus. The automatic art class payments had continued long after Sophie stopped mentioning lessons. The emergency medical bills for conditions that never seemed to require follow-up. The mortgage crisis that somehow resolved without affecting their lifestyle. Every dollar I'd given them had been diverted, not stolen, cleverly redirected through emotional manipulation and outright lies. They'd weaponized my love for Sophie, turned my generosity into their personal financing plan. My chest tightened with something between heartbreak and fury. The grandfather who'd proudly supported his family had been nothing more than a convenient bank account to them. Every crisis manufactured, every emergency fabricated. I picked up my phone, then set it down. My current bank balance showed enough resources for action, but what kind of action? What did a 67-year-old retired engineer do when his family had spent 4 years systematically deceiving him? The answer began forming as I stared at the BMW receipt. They'd used my trust against me, my love for Sophie as leverage, my desire to help as weakness. Time to show them what weakness actually looked like. My hand hovered over the phone for 30 seconds before resolve crystallized. 4 years of systematic lies deserved a systematic response. I pulled out my banking documents, fingers tracing account numbers with engineering precision. The first call went to Chase Bank customer service. After 2 minutes on hold, a representative named Jennifer answered, "Good afternoon, Mr. Harper. How can I assist you today?" "I need to report suspicious account activity involving unauthorized family access." I kept my voice professional, controlled. "I have specific transaction details and concerning evidence of financial misuse." "I understand your concerns, sir. Can you provide your account verification information?" I rattled off numbers I'd memorized decades ago. Social security digits, account numbers, security questions answered with the methodical precision that had served me through 35 years at Boeing. "Mr. Harper, I see multiple recurring transfers to a Brian Davis over the past several years. What's the nature of your concern? Recent discovery indicates these transfers were obtained through false pretenses. I have documentation showing requested emergency funds were misappropriated for luxury purchases. I need immediate freeze on all payments or transfers to this individual." Jennifer's tone shifted to professional concern. "That's serious, sir. I can initiate a fraud protection hold immediately. Do you have case details or police report numbers?" "Not yet, but I have bank statements, purchase receipts, and documented evidence of misrepresentation. I'm prepared to file formal complaints if necessary. Understood. I'm creating case number CH24031678842. The hold will activate within 2 hours, blocking all future transactions to the specified recipient. Would you like me to transfer you to our fraud investigation department? Not at this time. The immediate protection is my priority. The second call proved more complicated. Bank of America required different handling due to Emily's legitimate access through joint account structures I had established years earlier. After another hold period, Representative Marcus picked up. Bank of America fraud prevention. This is Marcus speaking. I need to discuss unauthorized access concerns regarding family account arrangements. My daughter has legitimate access, but I believe her spouse is manipulating her into making inappropriate transfer requests. That's a delicate situation, sir. What specific actions are you requesting? Temporary hold on all cards linked to contributions I've made to their household accounts. I want to revoke my financial authorization until I can establish better oversight protocols. Marcus walked me through the process, explaining how joint account protections worked, what documentation I'd need for permanent changes. More complex than the Chase situation, but achievable. I'm issuing case number BAC24031648891. Temporary restrictions activate in approximately 90 minutes. You'll receive confirmation via email and postal mail. Both calls completed. I set the phone down with satisfaction. Not revenge, financial responsibility. I had every legal right to control my own money, stop unauthorized usage, protect my assets from manipulation. The kitchen clock showed 5:15 p.m., Saturday afternoon. The birthday party would be hitting its peak right about now. Brian playing generous host with money he'd extracted through carefully crafted lies. In about an hour, when the caterers needed payment, when the entertainment fees came due, when all those business associates expected the level of hospitality Brian had promised, his cards would start declining. Emergency calls would begin, frantic explanations to confused vendors, professional embarrassment in front of those important networking contacts he'd valued more than his daughter's relationship with her grandfather. I looked at Sophie's framed photograph on my mantle, her gap-toothed smile from 2 Christmases ago, when she'd proudly shown me her latest artwork. She deserved better than a father who lied, manipulated, and stole. She deserved a grandfather who fought back. The phone sat silent on my table. In 45 minutes, it would start ringing with desperate voices and manufactured emergencies. This time, I'd be ready. My engineering mind had identified the problem. Now came the solution phase. 6:15 p.m. I checked my watch against the banking app notification glowing on my phone screen. 2 hours and 15 minutes since I'd made those calls. The account freezes should be fully active now. Case status, active, CH24031678842. The Chase app confirmed. Below it, Bank of America showed similar verification. Both institutions had implemented my fraud protection requests with the efficiency I'd expected from 35 years of dealing with financial systems. The satisfaction felt different from revenge, cleaner, more like solving an engineering problem where all variables finally aligned correctly. I settled into Margaret's old armchair, the one that faced the window overlooking my modest street. Saturday evening light filtered through curtains she'd sewn 15 years ago. The contrast with Brian's neighborhood couldn't be starker. No security guards here, no imported luxury cars gleaming in driveways. My phone sat on the side table within easy reach. Brian would call soon. Had to. Restaurant bills typically processed between 7 and 7:30, especially for large parties. The timing was mathematical, predictable. The engineering side of my brain had calculated everything. 300 guests at an upscale venue meant catering costs alone would hit $15,000. Add entertainment, decorations, venue rental. Brian was looking at a $25,000 tab minimum, money he'd planned to pay with cards linked to accounts I'd been funding for years. Part of me felt sick thinking about Sophie's reaction when her party ended in chaos, but another part, the part that had spent 4 years being systematically lied to, knew this lesson was necessary, not just for Brian, but for Emily. She needed to see who she'd married, what he'd been doing with her father's generosity. Margaret used to say, "Rick, sometimes being kind means refusing to enable bad behavior." I'd never understood what she meant until now. Every dollar I'd given them had made Brian bolder, more creative with his deceptions. I opened Google Maps on my phone, searching luxury restaurants Schaumburg. Golden Oak appeared at the top, 4-star rating, price range showing $4 signs. Exactly where Brian would take 300 business associates to impress them with wealth he'd stolen from his father-in-law. The restaurant's phone number glowed on my screen, a plan crystallized with the precision of a blueprint taking shape. I dialed, clearing my throat to deepen my voice slightly. Not disguise, just the formal tone I'd used in Boeing boardrooms for decades. Golden Oak, this is Manager Jennifer speaking. Good evening, Jennifer. This is regarding fraud alert protocols for your establishment. We've had reports of compromised payment methods being used for large party reservations this evening. Oh my, that's concerning, sir. Can you provide more details? Customer name Brian Davis, party of approximately 300 guests. Multiple financial institutions have flagged unusual account activity. We recommend requiring additional payment verification before processing any charges. Absolutely, sir. I'll flag the account immediately and ensure our payment processing team implements extra security measures. Thank you for the heads up. Just doing our job protecting businesses from fraudulent transactions. I hung up, staring at the phone with something approaching pride, not revenge, fraud prevention. Exactly what any responsible financial consultant would do when discovering systematic account misuse. 7:25 p.m. now. The party would be reaching its peak. Children running around in sugar-induced excitement. Adults networking over expensive wine. Brian playing the generous host, promising vendors payment that would never come. My phone sat silent on the table, waiting. In the kitchen, Sophie's abandoned gift receipt still lay among the scattered evidence of Brian's deception. A $200 art set for a granddaughter I wasn't allowed to see. The engineering problem was nearly solved. All variables accounted for. Pressure applied at precisely the right points. Now came the most satisfying part of any well-designed system. Watching it work exactly as planned. The phone would ring any minute now. The phone erupted at exactly 7:30. Brian's name flashed on the caller ID like a warning signal I'd been anticipating all evening. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Control meant setting the pace from the first word. Hello, Brian. Rick. His voice carried an edge I'd never heard before, strained, trying to sound casual but failing completely. Background noise leaked through, children laughing, clinking glasses, the artificial cheer of a party in full swing. Hey, listen, I'm having some technical difficulties with the banking systems. Weird computer glitches. You know how technology gets sometimes. I activated my phone's recording function, a habit from my Boeing days when every important conversation required documentation. Technical difficulties? That sounds frustrating. Yeah, exactly. Look, my cards aren't processing properly and I need some emergency assistance. Family helping family, right? Can you bring $3,000 in cash? I'm at Golden Oak Restaurant in Schaumburg. Interesting request. I kept my voice neutral, professional. What specifically requires $3,000 this evening? Don't play games with me, Rick. There are 300 people here waiting for dinner, and the restaurant's payment system is acting up. I need immediate liquidity solutions. 300 people. The same number I'd seen through his windows when he'd claimed the party was immediate family only. The irony tasted sharp as vinegar. Yes, I remember those 300 people, I said quietly. The ones you mentioned when you told me this was an intimate family gathering. Silence stretched across the connection. When Brian spoke again, his tone had shifted from desperate to demanding. Fine. You want to relitigate past decisions? Right now I need financial backup, and you're the logical resource. Can you bring the money or not? That depends. What happened to your usual financing methods? Surely a successful sales manager with your income level has adequate credit facilities. Stop being sarcastic. The mask was slipping now, revealing something uglier underneath. Every card in my wallet is declining. The restaurant manager is standing here demanding collateral. I had to give them my Rolex just to buy time for this conversation. His Rolex. The $20,000 submariner he'd bought during our last mortgage emergency. Another purchase I'd unknowingly financed through manufactured family crises. How unfortunate. Have you considered calling your business associates? Surely those important networking contacts could assist with temporary liquidity issues. Rick, I'm warning you. Stop playing stupid games. If you don't help me right now, there will be consequences. Serious consequences for your relationship with Sophie. There it was. The threat I'd been expecting. The leverage he'd always used to manipulate my generosity. Access to my granddaughter, weaponized against my love for her. Are you threatening to prevent me from seeing Sophie? I asked, maintaining my recording voice steady and clear. I'm explaining reality. Emily listens to me about family decisions. If you want to maintain grandfather privileges, you'll bring that money within 30 minutes. Grandfather privileges. The phrase hit like a physical blow. You mean the privileges you denied me this afternoon when you had security remove me from my granddaughter's birthday party? That was different. This is about family loyalty versus petty grudges. Loyalty? I almost laughed. Brian, in 4 years you've taken $97,000 from me through false emergencies and manufactured crises. The loyalty seems rather one-directional. Dead silence. I could practically hear his brain recalculating, trying to determine how much I knew, what evidence I might have gathered. You've been tracking our family assistance requests? His voice had gone cold, calculating. That's pretty obsessive behavior for someone claiming to help out a love. I keep records, engineering habit, bank statements, receipts, documentation, including the BMW purchase receipt dated the same day you claimed to need $25,000 for medical emergencies. Another pause, longer this time. Background restaurant noise seemed muted, as if he'd moved somewhere private. Bring the money, Rick, or you'll never see Sophie again. Emily will understand why we need to protect our daughter from unstable family members who spy on us and keep creepy financial records. The line went dead with a sharp click. I sat in Margaret's chair, staring at the phone's recording indicator showing 37 minutes of captured conversation. Every threat, every admission, every manipulative tactic documented in Brian's own words. Evidence. Legal, recorded, indisputable evidence of emotional manipulation, financial coercion, and threats to withhold access to my granddaughter. The engineering problem had just provided its own solution. The recording played back with crystalline clarity through my phone's speaker. Brian's voice, desperate and increasingly threatening, filled my living room like a confession broadcast from his own conscience. You'll never see Sophie again. Emily will understand why we need to protect our daughter from unstable family members. 37 minutes of documented manipulation, threats, and admissions. Evidence that would speak louder than any grandfather's complaints about unfair treatment. Legal proof of what Margaret used to call showing someone their true face. I copied the file to my computer, backed it up to cloud storage, and emailed a copy to myself with the timestamp clearly visible. 30 years in engineering had taught me the value of redundant documentation. 8:15 p.m. The party would be in full crisis mode by now. Vendors demanding payment, guests witnessing Brian's public humiliation, Sophie probably confused by the chaos surrounding what should have been her special day. My chest tightened thinking about her disappointment. But children were resilient. She'd remember the attempted celebration, not the financial catastrophe that ended it. What mattered more was preventing future manipulations, protecting her from growing up with a father who viewed family as exploitable resources. I pulled out my laptop and began composing an email to Sarah Miller, the family law attorney Michael had recommended last Christmas. Her website showed 15 years specializing in custody disputes, grandparents' rights, financial abuse cases. 85% success rate in complex family situations. The subject line wrote itself, documented financial abuse and grandparent access denial, urgent consultation required. I attached the recorded conversation, bank statements showing 4 years of systematic deception, receipts proving luxury purchases made with emergency funds, and copies of Brian's text messages requesting various family assistance over time. The evidence painted a clear picture, calculated manipulation of an elderly widower's generosity, emotional blackmail using grandchild access as leverage, financial fraud disguised as family emergencies. Margaret's photograph watched me from the mantel as I typed. She'd always said I was too trusting, too willing to believe the best in people. But she'd also taught me that once you discovered someone's true nature, ignoring it became complicity in their behavior. Family loyalty versus petty grudges, Brian had said, as if documenting 4 years of systematic theft qualified as petty. as if protecting my granddaughter from learning that love could be purchased and family relationships were negotiable assets qualified as grudges. My phone buzzed with a text message, Emily's number. Dad, Brian says you're having some kind of breakdown and making crazy accusations. He's worried about your mental state. Maybe we should talk. I stared at the message, recognizing Brian's language patterns in Emily's words. He'd gotten to her first, shaped the narrative, positioned himself as the concerned family member dealing with an unstable elderly relative. Smart. But not smart enough. I screenshot Emily's text and added it to Sarah Miller's growing case file. More evidence of Brian's manipulation tactics, this time using his wife to gaslight her own father. The email to Sarah Miller was ready. Comprehensive, documented, legally precise. I hovered over the send button for 30 seconds, knowing that pressing it would transform this from family drama into legal warfare. But Brian had made his choice when he threatened to permanently separate me from Sophie, when he'd spent years stealing my money while pretending to be grateful, when he'd trained my own daughter to question my mental stability rather than address his documented theft. I pressed send. The laptop chimed confirmation. Legal machinery now set in motion, evidence preserved, professional help engaged. The engineering solution was complete, pressure applied at precisely the right points to expose structural weaknesses in Brian's carefully constructed lies. My phone buzzed again, another text from Emily. Dad, please call me. We need to discuss what happened tonight. Not yet. First, I needed to visit Sophie's school. Monday morning, introduce myself to her teachers, establish that her grandfather was a stable, loving presence in her life, document my relationship with her before Brian could poison those wells too. Then I'd call Emily, but this time, I'd be the one controlling the conversation. Sunday morning, I organized every document into manila folders, each labeled with precise dates and amounts. The dining room table became a courtroom exhibit, 8 years of systematic deception laid out in chronological order like evidence for a jury. Emily had called at 10 a.m. Dad, can you come over? We need to discuss what happened last night. Brian thinks maybe we can work something out. The same address where I'd been humiliated yesterday. But today felt different. Yesterday I'd arrived as a hopeful grandfather, bearing gifts. Today, I came as a prosecutor, armed with proof. Emily answered the door looking exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, hair uncombed, wearing the same clothes from yesterday's disaster. Behind her, the house showed signs of crisis, champagne glasses still scattered on counters, wilted balloons drooping from door frames. Dad, thank goodness you're here. I don't understand what happened with the payment systems yesterday. I set my folders on their kitchen table. Where's Sophie? Upstairs doing homework. She keeps asking why you weren't at her party. Emily's voice cracked. I didn't know what to tell her. Brian emerged from the living room, attempting his usual confident stride, but moving like a man walking on thin ice. His expensive suit had been replaced by jeans and a wrinkled polo shirt. The Rolex was notably absent from his wrist. Rick, glad you came. Listen, yesterday was unfortunate, but we're all family here. Surely we can resolve whatever technical banking issues caused the problem. I opened the first folder, bank statements dating back to 2020, each suspicious transaction highlighted in the yellow marker. Technical issues. Interesting way to phrase 4 years of a documented fraud. Emily moved closer, studying the papers. Dad, what are these? Every check I've written to help your family, every emergency request, every crisis that required my financial assistance. I spread receipts across their granite countertop, paired with the actual purchases made using those funds. The BMW X7 dealership receipt sat prominently atop the pile, dated March 15, 2022. Next to it, Emily's tearful phone call transcript from that same day, begging for $25,000 to cover Sophie's medical complications. Emily's face went white. Brian, this can't be right. Everything was for our family's benefit, Brian said quickly. Good transportation means child safety. Sophie needs reliable vehicles for school activities. I pulled out another folder. As Sophie's art classes, $300 monthly for specialized instruction. The receipts showed payments continuing 18 months after Sophie mentioned she'd stopped attending lessons. Those were advanced preparation courses, Brian insisted. Investment in her future artistic development trajectory. Emily, I said quietly, look at the dates. Every emergency phone call matches a luxury purchase within 48 hours. She sank into a kitchen chair, studying the chronological evidence, medical emergency funds becoming jewelry purchases, mortgage crisis money transformed into vacation expenses. Her husband had systematically manipulated her father's love for his granddaughter into a personal financing scheme. $97,000, I said, placing the calculator summary in front of them both. 8 years of manufactured emergencies and fictional crises. Brian's facade finally cracked. You want to audit every family decision? Fine. Everything I did was for Emily and Sophie. You think I enjoyed asking you for help? You enjoyed lying about what you needed it for. Sophie appeared at the top of the stairs in her pajamas. Mommy, why is everyone shouting? Emily immediately stood. Go back to your room, honey. Adults are just talking. But why wasn't Grandpa at my party yesterday? Did I do something wrong? The question hung in the air like an indictment. This innocent child, confused about why her grandfather had been excluded from celebrating her 10th birthday while her father spent stolen money entertaining strangers. Brian's voice turned desperate. Emily, you have to choose. Your father is trying to destroy our marriage over business disagreements. I gathered the documents, stacking them with engineering precision. I want every penny returned, all $97,000, plus interest calculated at current banking rates. That's impossible, Brian stammered. Those were gifts, family assistance, obtained through false pretenses and outright lies. I closed the final folder. You have until the end of business tomorrow to provide a repayment plan. Emily stared at the empty table where the evidence had been displayed. Dad, I don't know what to say. Say you'll protect Sophie from growing up thinking this behavior is normal. Brian followed me toward the door. Rick, we can work something out. Payment arrangements, installment plans. I paused at the threshold. You used my love for Sophie as a weapon against me. There's nothing left to work out. Walking to my car, I felt Emily watching from the window. Behind her, Brian paced frantically, probably already calculating which assets he could liquidate first. The folders sat securely in my passenger seat. Tomorrow, Sarah Miller would transform this family crisis into legal action. Monday morning, I knew exactly what I had to do. The confrontation with Emily had confirmed Brian's guilt beyond any doubt. His desperate justifications and hollow promises revealed a man caught in systematic deception. I spent an hour organizing documents into a professional presentation, then drove downtown to LaSalle Street. The 40-minute journey from suburban Park Ridge to Chicago's financial district felt like traveling from family drama into serious business territory. Miller and Associates occupied the 23rd floor of a glass tower that stretched toward March clouds. The reception area displayed legal awards, professional certifications, and the quiet confidence that comes from 15 years of successful family law practice. Sarah Miller greeted me in a corner office overlooking the Chicago River. 50s, sharp gray suit, no-nonsense handshake that communicated competence without warmth. Behind her desk, case files were stacked with military precision. Mr. Harper, your email was quite detailed. I've reviewed your preliminary documentation, and frankly, this appears to be textbook family financial abuse. I opened my briefcase, removing folders organized by date and category. I brought everything: bank statements, receipts, recorded conversations, text message screenshots. Sarah photographed each document with professional equipment, creating a digital case file while asking targeted questions about dates, amounts, and Brian's specific deception methods. Your record keeping is exemplary, she noted, studying the BMW purchase receipt. Most family fraud cases lack this level of documentation. The systematic nature is particularly egregious, not opportunistic theft, but calculated long-term manipulation. What are my realistic chances of recovery? With evidence this comprehensive, 90% success rate for full restitution. She leaned back in her leather chair. The recorded conversation where he threatens to prevent access to your granddaughter, that alone constitutes emotional coercion and extortion. Sarah outlined our strategy with the precision I'd appreciated in engineering consultations. Start with a formal demand letter, providing 72 hours for response. If ignored, file civil recovery proceedings while exploring criminal fraud charges. I'll be direct, Mr. Harper. Pursuing this will likely destroy their marriage. Brian's behavior suggests pathological financial irresponsibility, Emily will face difficult choices about her future. It's already destroyed. I'm just documenting the damage. She drafted a demand letter on official letterhead, itemizing the $97,000 plus accumulated interest and legal fees. The language was precise, professional, and absolutely uncompromising. Fraudulent misrepresentation of family emergencies, systematic theft through emotional manipulation. Criminal charges would follow if civil demands weren't met. Certified delivery this afternoon, Sarah confirmed. He'll receive it tomorrow morning with signature confirmation. The 72-hour clock starts immediately upon delivery. The letter felt substantial in my hands. 3 pages of legal terminology that transformed 4 years of family manipulation into actionable civil claims. Professional documentation that Brian's smooth talking couldn't deflect or rationalize away. One final question, I asked while signing the retainer agreement. What happens if he simply declares bankruptcy to avoid payment? We've considered that possibility. The fraudulent nature of his actions makes these debts non-dischargeable under federal bankruptcy law. He can't steal through lies, then claim inability to pay. Leaving the law office, I felt the weight of official proceedings beginning. No more family drama or emotional manipulation, just documented evidence, legal deadlines, and professional consequences for systematic theft. The certified letter would arrive tomorrow morning at Brian's house. By Wednesday afternoon, he'd need to produce a full repayment plan or face civil court proceedings that would expose every deception to legal scrutiny. I drove home through Chicago traffic, the signed legal documents secure in my briefcase. The engineering problem was nearly solved, all pressure points identified, systematic action initiated, inevitable consequences set in motion. Tomorrow, Brian would learn the difference between family arguments and legal reality. 7 p.m. I sat in my living room watching evening news when the phone rang. Michael's name on the caller ID brought immediate relief. My son's voice always carried the calm competence of his medical training. Dad, Emily called me this afternoon. She told me everything that happened. His voice carried concern mixed with something harder. I want you to know, I'm completely on your side. I muted the television. Michael, I don't want to drag you into family politics. Dad, stop. This isn't politics. This is fraud. Brian has been systematically stealing from you for years, and I should have seen it sooner. A pause, then the sound of a hospital intercom in the background. I'm calling from the break room between surgeries, but this couldn't wait. You suspected something? Professional instinct. I see manipulation patterns in my practice. Patients who exaggerate symptoms for prescription medications, family members who exploit elderly relatives. Brian's requests always felt too convenient, too perfectly timed. Michael explained his conversation with Emily earlier that day. She'd called him in tears, confused about loyalty between father and husband, overwhelmed by the documented evidence I'd presented. She's scared, Dad. 8 years of marriage to someone who turns out to be a systematic liar. She doesn't know who she can trust anymore. What did you tell her? That her father is the most honest man I've ever known. And if you say Brian stole $97,000, then Brian stole $97,000. His voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to life and death decisions. I also told her that protecting Sophie comes before protecting Brian's feelings. The support felt overwhelming after years of doubt about family loyalty. Michael had always been my responsible child. Medical school, surgical residency, successful practice. His validation meant more than any legal victory. I can fly out tomorrow if you need me for court proceedings, he continued. My surgical schedule is flexible for family emergencies. It might not come to that. The lawyer sent a demand letter today. Good. Brian needs to face consequences for his actions. A moment of quiet, then. Dad, I'm proud of you for fighting back. Mom would be proud, too. She always said you were too trusting for your own good. Margaret had indeed warned me about people who might exploit my generosity. I'd never imagined she meant my own son-in-law. Michael, what if Emily chooses to stay with Brian despite the evidence? Then we support her decision while protecting you and Sophie. But honestly, I think she's stronger than either of us realized. The Emily I talked to today sounded angry at being deceived, not defensive of her deceiver. He was booking a flight for Wednesday, planning to arrive before any potential court deadlines. professional time off to support family crisis, medical practice rearranged to ensure his father didn't face this alone. I should have visited more often, he said. Should have been around to notice what Brian was doing. You have your own life in San Francisco, successful career, important responsibilities. Nothing more important than family, real family, not people who see relatives as funding sources. The hospital intercom called for Dr. Harper to surgery. Dad, I have to go save someone's life, but I'll call you tomorrow after the demand letter is delivered. Michael, thank you for believing me, for supporting this fight. Thank you for finally fighting back. The line went quiet, leaving me alone with the evening news and a profound sense of relief. I wasn't isolated in this battle. My son understood the situation clearly, saw through Brian's manipulations, and was prepared to take professional time off to support legal proceedings. Emily might still be conflicted about choosing between father and husband, but Michael's support provided the strength needed to see this through to whatever end justice required. The demand letter would arrive tomorrow morning. By Wednesday, we'd know whether Brian chose repayment or court battles. Either way, I wouldn't be fighting alone. Tuesday afternoon, I chose Corner Bakery in Park Ridge for our meeting, neutral territory where Emily could speak freely without Brian's influence. The familiar neighborhood spot felt safe, controllable, far from the luxury venues where she'd grown accustomed to living beyond her means. Emily's morning call had been brief but urgent. Dad, can we meet? I found something terrible. She arrived looking devastated. Red-rimmed eyes suggested a sleepless night, and her hands clutched a manila folder like it contained evidence of her own conviction. Gone was the careful makeup and designer clothing, just jeans, a sweater, and the raw honesty of someone who'd discovered their entire marriage was built on lies. I went through Brian's home office last night, she said, sliding the folder across our corner table. After you left Sunday, I couldn't stop thinking about those receipts. So I looked deeper. Inside were documents I'd never seen. Gambling receipts from casinos in Indiana and Wisconsin. Restaurant bills for expensive dinners with people I didn't recognize. Personal shopping sprees at luxury stores. All paid for during the weeks following our family emergency conversations. Dad, it's worse than we thought. He wasn't just lying about what he needed money for. He was creating fake crises to fund a lifestyle I never knew about. A casino receipt from Horseshoe Casino. Hammond showed $1,500 losses on the same day I'd transferred money for Sophie's medical specialist appointment. Another showed regular weekly visits, thousands lost, while he painted himself as a struggling family man to his father-in-law. Emily, when did you start suspecting something was wrong? Honestly, last year when he bought that watch, I asked where he got the money, and he said it was a bonus from work, but I called his company. There were no bonuses that quarter. She wiped her eyes with a napkin. I was scared to dig deeper, scared of what I'd find. The cafe noise faded around us as she continued. I've been living with a stranger, Dad. Everything he told me, every emergency we faced together, it was all manipulation designed to extract money from you. What are you going to do now? Your lawyer explained my options when I called her this morning. If I testify against Brian in court, I can divorce him with full custody of Sophie. She said having a witness who discovered additional evidence makes your case even stronger. I reached across the table, covering her shaking hands with mine. Emily, I need you to understand. I'm not trying to destroy your marriage. Brian did that himself. I know, Dad. I've known for months that something was fundamentally wrong. I just didn't want to admit I'd married someone who would lie to my face while stealing from my father. She straightened in her chair, decision crystallizing. Sophie deserves better than a father who views family as a funding source. The afternoon light shifted through the bakery windows as our conversation deepened. Other customers gave us respectful privacy, sensing the gravity of our discussion. Coffee grew cold, while Emily purged 8 years of suppressed doubts and ignored warning signs. There's something else, she said, pulling out her phone. I recorded Brian last night when he was making calls about emergency loans. He was telling people that his crazy father-in-law was making false accusations, and he needed money to fight legal harassment. Even in crisis, Brian was crafting narratives that painted him as victim rather than perpetrator. But this time, Emily had documented his lies instead of believing them. I'm calling Sarah Miller tomorrow morning, Emily declared. I want to formally cooperate with your case. Full testimony, additional evidence, whatever helps recover what he stole from you. Walking to our cars, Emily hugged me with genuine affection I hadn't felt from her in years. The daughter who'd been manipulated into questioning her father's generosity was becoming the woman willing to testify against her husband's systematic theft. Dad, I'm sorry it took me so long to see the truth. All that matters is seeing it now. She drove away toward Schaumburg, toward the difficult conversation with Brian that would end their marriage officially. I headed home, knowing tomorrow would bring the certified demand letter that would force Brian to choose between repayment and criminal prosecution. The family was finally united on the right side of justice. Wednesday afternoon, I sat in my kitchen finishing a quiet lunch when the phone rang exactly as I'd anticipated. Brian's name on the caller ID confirmed that Sarah Miller's certified demand letter had reached its target. Emily had called that morning with updates. Dad, I spoke with your lawyer. The demand letter was delivered to Brian's office at 10 a.m. His secretary signed for it in front of several co-workers. Public humiliation at his workplace, exactly the kind of professional embarrassment that would shatter Brian's carefully crafted image. I answered on the third ring. Rick, we need to talk. Brian's voice carried strain I'd never heard before. Gone was the smooth sales manager confidence, replaced by barely controlled panic. This legal nonsense has gone far enough. I activated my phone's recording feature, same as always when dealing with Brian's manipulations. What legal nonsense would that be? Don't play games. Your lawyer's ridiculous demand letter arrived at my office this morning. $112,000? That's insane. Those were family gifts, assistance between relatives. Interesting interpretation. The documented evidence suggests systematic fraud through false emergency claims. Look, I admit some of the requests weren't entirely accurate, but everything was spent on family needs. The BMW provides safe transportation for Sophie. The house improvements benefit everyone. Brian was still lying, even caught with comprehensive proof. Gambling receipts and luxury dining didn't qualify as family expenses, but he'd spent years believing his own fictional narratives. Brian, you have 24 hours to provide full repayment or face civil and criminal charges. No extensions, no payment plans, no negotiations. 24 hours is impossible. I need time to liquidate assets, arrange financing. The BMW still has outstanding loan balance. I can't sell it for full value. His panic was revealing crucial information. The luxury purchases had been financed through debt, not actual wealth. Brian had been living a leveraged lifestyle funded by my retirement savings, while drowning in payments for items he couldn't afford. Then you should have considered that before spending 4 years lying about family emergencies. Fine. You want to destroy Sophie's stable home environment over money? You want your granddaughter to watch her parents' marriage collapse because you're too petty to accept reasonable repayment terms? The same manipulation tactics, using Sophie as emotional leverage. But this time, I had evidence of his threats recorded and documented. Sarah Miller had explained how emotional coercion strengthened our case rather than weakening it. Sophie's stability was never threatened by honest financial management. Honest? You've been spying on our family spending, tracking every purchase like some obsessive accountant. Emily's scared of you now. She thinks you've lost your mind over losing a little retirement money. Another lie? Emily had already committed to testifying against him. Brian was operating with incomplete information, still believing he could manipulate family dynamics through deception. $112,000 by 5 p.m. tomorrow, or Sarah Miller files both civil recovery and criminal fraud charges with the Cook County Prosecutor's Office. This is extortion. I'll countersue for harassment, mental distress, false accusations. With what money, Brian? Your credit's ruined, your professional reputation is compromised, and your wife has discovered evidence of systematic lying. Dead silence. The background office noise disappeared, suggesting he'd moved to a private location. When he spoke again, his voice carried defeat, mixed with desperate anger. You'll regret this, Rick. When Sophie grows up knowing her grandfather destroyed her family over money, you'll regret every penny. The line went dead with a sharp click. I sat in my kitchen, studying the recording device that had captured another 37 minutes of Brian's threats and admissions. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., he'd either produce payment nobody believed he could manage, or face the legal consequences he'd spent 4 years earning. Sarah Miller's phone rang twice before she answered. Rick, I was expecting your call. How did he respond to the demand letter? Exactly as you predicted. Desperate threats, impossible promises, and complete denial of responsibility. Perfect. That confirms our strategy. See you in court if he doesn't pay. The demand letter had been delivered. The ultimatum was clear. Tomorrow would bring either justice or the beginning of legal proceedings that would expose every lie Brian had told over 8 years. Either way, the systematic theft was finally ending. Brian failed to produce payment within the deadline, exactly as everyone had predicted. Sarah Miller filed civil recovery proceedings the following Thursday, and criminal fraud charges were submitted to the Cook County Prosecutor's Office by Friday afternoon. The next 6 weeks moved with legal precision I found deeply satisfying. Emily's divorce proceedings ran parallel to my civil case, her testimony providing devastating evidence of Brian's systematic deception. Michael flew in from San Francisco twice, offering moral support and professional credibility that impressed the court. The hearing came in early May, downtown at the Cook County Courthouse. Brian appeared with a public defender, unable to afford private representation. His confident sales manager persona had completely collapsed under the weight of documented evidence. Judge Martinez reviewed our documentation methodically. 8 years of bank statements, receipts proving luxury purchases during manufactured emergencies, recorded conversations where Brian threatened family access to coerce continued payments. Emily testified about discovering hidden gambling receipts and fake crisis communications. Mr. Davis, Judge Martinez said, this represents textbook financial elder abuse through systematic deception. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. The ruling was decisive. Full restitution of $97,000, plus accumulated interest and legal fees totaling $18,000 additional. When Brian claimed inability to pay, the court ordered asset seizure starting with the BMW X7, followed by wage garnishment until full payment was completed. Brian's parents retrieved him from Illinois the following week, a 40-year-old man returning to Terre Haute with his reputation destroyed and his marriage ended. Emily received full custody of Sophie, while Brian's visitation was restricted to supervised visits requiring advanced scheduling. By June, our family had begun healing. Emily moved to a smaller house in Park Ridge, closer to me, funded by the BMW's liquidation value. Sophie slowly understood that her parents' separation wasn't her fault, and her grandfather's absence from the birthday party hadn't been personal rejection. Yes, to June 20th, 3 months after the disastrous restaurant party, I hosted Sophie's proper birthday celebration in my backyard garden. No expensive caterers or hired entertainment. Just family around a homemade cake Emily and I had baked together that morning. Michael had flown in for the weekend, his presence providing the complete family unit Sophie needed to understand love didn't require luxury. We gave her the professional art supplies I had originally intended. $200 worth of paints, brushes, and canvas that sparked genuine excitement. "Grandpa, look what I painted for you." Sophie held up a watercolor, showing 3 figures around a lake, her, Emily, and me. "Can we visit a real lake tomorrow?" "Absolutely. Lake Michigan is only 30 minutes away." Emily watched from the picnic table, relief evident in her posture. "Dad, I can't thank you enough. For fighting for the truth, for protecting Sophie from growing up thinking Brian's behavior was normal. Protecting family is what grandfathers do." The afternoon sun filtered through oak trees Margaret had planted 20 years earlier, creating natural beauty that no expensive venue could match. Sophie's laughter rang through the garden as she chased butterflies between roses that had grown wild since Margaret's death. Simple pleasure, honest relationships, genuine celebration of a child's life rather than performance for social media and business networking. Everything Brian's stolen money had supposedly purchased, but delivered authentically through love and attention. Michael helped Sophie hang her artwork on my refrigerator, the same spot where her childhood drawings had been displayed before Brian's manipulations complicated our relationship. 3 generations together again, trust restored through truth rather than wealth. As evening approached and Sophie fell asleep in Margaret's old chair, Emily and Michael helped clean up our modest celebration. No catering staff, no security guards, no bills that would drain retirement accounts through deceptive emergency requests. "Dad," Michael said quietly, "you did the right thing. Sophie will grow up knowing her grandfather fought for justice rather than enabling theft." I looked at my granddaughter sleeping peacefully, surrounded by family who loved her without conditions or hidden agendas. The engineering problem was finally solved. All variables aligned correctly. Systematic pressure applied at proper points. Justice achieved through documented evidence rather than emotional manipulation. Brian's theft had ended. Sophie's innocence was protected. Our family was whole again. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.